Geng Niang. The story goes that Geng Niang was born into a prestigious family in Zhangzhou and married the daughter of Magistrate Yu, named Geng Niang. She was both beautiful and virtuous, and the couple had a deep bond. During a time of chaos and upheaval, Geng Niang's family left their hometown and sought refuge in the south. On their journey, they encountered a young man also fleeing with his wife. He introduced himself as Wang Shiba, a native of Yangzhou, and offered to lead the way. Geng Niang was pleased with the arrangement, and the two families traveled together and stayed together. One day, by a river bank, Geng Niang secretly whispered to Geng Niang, "Don't share a boat with that young man. He keeps staring at me with wondering eyes and an odd expression. It's as if he's up to no good." Geng Niang agreed. Wang Shiba, however, generously hired a large boat and helped the Geng family with their luggage, being very attentive and considerate. Geng Niang didn't want to refuse his kindness and also considered that Wang Shiba had his wife with him, which should be safe. The wife stayed with Geng Niang and appeared gentle and amiable. Wang Shiba sat at the bow of the boat, conversing intimately with the boat's occupants as if they were old friends. As the sunset and darkness enveloped the vast waters, the orientation became unclear. Geng Niang felt uneasy about the desolate and treacherous surroundings. After a while, the moon rose, revealing a landscape covered in reeds. When the boat finally stopped, Wang Shiba invited Geng Niang and his father to the bow to admire the scenery. Seizing the opportunity, Wang Shiba pushed Geng Niang into the water. Geng Niang's father saw this and was about to shout, but the boatman knocked him into the water with an oar. Geng Niang's mother heard the commotion, rushed out, and was also struck down into the water. Only then did Wang Shiba shout for help. While Geng Niang's mother was coming out, Geng Niang, following behind, had already sensed what had happened. She heard that the entire family had fallen into the water, yet she remained calm, shedding tears and saying, "My in-laws have all drowned. Where shall I go now?" Wang Shiba entered and comforted her, saying, "Madam, please don't worry. Come with me to Nanjing. I have a house and property, and I'm well off. I'll make sure you have everything you need." Geng Niang stopped her tears and said, "If it can be like that, I'll be content." Wang Shiba was delighted and promised to take care of her. That night, Wang Shiba tried to engage in intimate relations with Geng Niang, but she pretended to be menstruating. He then went to sleep with the other woman. As the night progressed, Wang Shiba and the other woman began arguing loudly. Geng Niang couldn't discern the reason for the argument, but she heard the woman say, "You're afraid thunder will shatter your head for doing such things." Wang Shiba struck the woman, and she cried out, "Just kill me. I refuse to be the wife of a murderer and thief." Wang Shiba shouted and dragged the woman out of the cabin. There was a dull thud, followed by the sound of the woman falling into the water. A few days later, in Nanjing, Wang Shiba returned home with Geng Niang. When they entered, his mother was surprised by the unfamiliar wife. Wang Shiba explained, "The previous wife drowned in the water, and this is my new wife." Back in their room, Wang Shiba attempted to get close to Geng Niang, but she smiled and said, "You're over 30 years old. Don't you understand the ways of the world? Even in ordinary families, when marrying, they offer a toast with light wine. Given your family's affluence, it should be even easier to do so if you're not slightly tipsy. Hasty actions will lead to a mess." Wang Shiba was delighted and prepared a feast. They sat down to drink, and Geng Niang encouraged Wang Shiba to drink more. He eventually became drunk and declined more drinks. Geng Niang changed to a larger cup, smiled playfully, and insisted he drink. Wang Shiba, not wanting to refuse, drank again and became quite drunk. He undressed and lay on the bed, urging Geng Niang to join him. Geng Niang extinguished the lamps, claiming she needed to urinate, and left the room. She returned with a knife and approached the bed in the darkness. Feeling Wang Shiba's neck, he grabbed her arm and spoke affectionate words. Geng Niang struck with all her might, but Wang Shiba didn't die immediately. He struggled to get up, and Geng Niang struck again, finally ending his life. Wang Shiba's mother seemed to hear the commotion and came to investigate. Geng Niang also killed her. Wang Shiba's younger brother, Wang Shiju, noticed what was happening. Geng Niang knew that she would face death and attempted to kill herself with the knife. However, the blade turned, and she couldn't pierce herself. She opened the door and fled. When Wang Shiju chased after her, she had already jumped into a pond. He urgently called the neighbors, and they pulled Geng Niang out of the water. She was already dead, but her face remained dignified and beautiful, as if she were still alive. Together, they examined Wang Shiba's body and found a letter on the window. It was written by Geng Niang and detailed the injustices her family had suffered. Everyone regarded Geng Niang as a heroic woman and agreed to raise funds for her funeral. By morning, thousands had come to pay their respects. Upon seeing Geng Niang, they admired her and paid their respects. In just one day, they collected over 100 taels of silver. Kind-hearted people bought her a pearl crown, fine clothes, gold and silver jewelry, high-quality coffin materials, and various burial items. She was buried in a cemetery in the southern suburbs. Originally, after being pushed into the water, Jin Sheng was fortunate to float on a piece of wood, which saved him from a great danger. When daylight came, he drifted to the Huai River and was rescued by a small boat. This boat was specially set up by the wealthy Mr. Yin to save people who fell into the water. Once Jin Niang regained consciousness, he went to express his gratitude to Mr. Yin. Mr. Yin treated him generously and even offered to have him stay and teach his son. Jin Niang, unsure about the fate of his family, was torn between going to visit them and staying. It was then heard that the drowned old couple has been rescued. Jin Niang suspected it might be his parents, so he hurriedly went to see, and indeed it was them. Mr. Yin helped him purchase coffins for his parents. While Jin Niang was grieving and weeping, he heard about a woman who was rescued from drowning, claiming to be Jin Niang's wife. Wiping his tears, Jin Niang ran outside in astonishment, and the woman had already arrived. However, she wasn't Geng Niang, but Wang Shiba's wife, who burst into tears when she saw Jin Niang pleading for his shelter. Jin Niang responded, "My thoughts are in turmoil. I have no room to plan for you." The woman cried even more intensely. Mr. Yin inquired about the situation and advised Jin Niang to take her in as his wife, seeing it as heaven's retribution. Jin Niang used his mourning as an excuse and was planning revenge. He thought a family would be a burden. The woman said, "If it were as you say, if Geng Niang were still alive, would you abandon her to seek revenge?" Mr. Yin found the woman's reasoning sensible and suggested that Jin Niang temporarily take her in. During the burial of his parents, the woman wore mourning clothes and cried intensely, as if her own parents had died. After the funeral, with a sharp blade in hand and a bowl of rice, Jin Niang intended to go to Yangzhou for revenge. The woman persuaded him, "My surname is Tang, I'm from Nanjing, and I'm from the same hometown as that vile person." He claimed to be from Yangzhou before, but those were all lies. Moreover, most of the river bandits are likely his accomplices. Going like this may not result in vengeance. It could even cause trouble. Jin Niang hesitated upon hearing her words. Suddenly, news spread of a heroic woman seeking revenge through murder. This story circulated widely along the river, with detailed accounts of her deeds. While Jin Niang felt satisfied hearing this news, the knowledge of Geng Niang's death intensified his grief. He thanked Tang Shi and said, "Fortunately, I haven't done anything to shame you. How can I remarry with such a heroic woman in my family?" As they already had a prior agreement, Tang Shi refused to leave halfway and was willing to become a concubine. Coincidentally, a vice-general surnamed Yuan, who had a deep friendship with Mr. Yin, passed through their area on his way west. He came to visit Mr. Yin and, upon seeing Jin Niang, was greatly pleased. He invited Jin Niang to become a military secretary. After some time, when the rebels rebelled, General Yuan achieved significant accomplishments. Jin Niang's military contributions earned him the rank of sub-prefect upon returning. It was at this point that he formally married Tang Shi. Several days later, Jin Niang took Tang Shi to Nanjing to pay respects at Geng Niang's grave. When they reached Zhenjiang on their way to Jinshan, a small boat approached them. On board was an old woman and a young woman who greatly resembled Geng Niang. As the small boat sped by, the young woman glanced at Jin Niang through the window, her expression resembling Geng Niang's even more. Jin Niang was both astonished and hesitant to inquire further. so he hurriedly called out, "Look! That duck is flying up into the sky." Upon hearing this, the young woman shouted, "Is the greedy dog trying to eat cat food?" These were jokes that the couple used to exchange when they were together in their chamber. Geng Niang was greatly shocked, and as the small boat moved away, he observed more closely and realized that it was indeed Geng Niang. The maid helped Geng Niang onto their boat, and the two embraced and wept, with the others on the boat sharing in their emotions. Tang Shi paid her respects to Geng Niang as a legitimate wife, and Geng Niang inquired with astonishment. Geng Niang then carefully explained the circumstances. Geng Niang held Tang Shi's hand and said during that shared conversation on the boat, "Something I often couldn't forget. Who would have thought we'd become family? Thanks to you for burying my in-laws. I should thank you first. How can we meet each other with such formalities?" According to their ages, since Tang Shi was 1 year younger than Geng Niang, they addressed each other as sisters. In reality, after Geng Niang was buried, she didn't know how much time had passed. Suddenly, she heard someone calling her, "Geng Niang, your husband isn't dead. You should be reunited." Then, as if waking from a dream, she touched her surroundings and realized she was buried. She felt stifled but not in pain. Some miscreants discovered her rich burial items and began to dig up the grave. Seeing that Geng Niang was still alive, both sides were shocked and afraid. Afraid they might harm her, Geng Niang pleaded, "Thanks to you, I can see the light of day again. Take the jewelry on my head and go. You can sell me to a nunnery and get a few coins." "I won. Tell anyone about this," one of the grave robbers said. "Madam, you're a virtuous and heroic woman. Even deities admire you. We only did this unspeakable act out of poverty and necessity. As long as you don't speak of it, we will be grateful." "How could we dare to sell you as a nun?" Geng Niang said. "This is what I'm willing to do." Another grave robber said, "There's a Mrs. Zheng in Zhenjiang, a widow without children. If she sees you, she'll surely be delighted." Geng Niang thanked them and removed her precious jewelry, giving it all to them. The grave robbers were hesitant to accept, but after Geng Niang insisted, they accepted with gratitude. They then hired a cart and boat, and they sent Geng Niang to Mrs. Zheng's house, pretending that she was lost due to windy weather while traveling by boat. Mrs. Zheng was a wealthy woman living as a widow, and she was extremely pleased to see Geng Niang. She treated Geng Niang as her own daughter. They had just returned from Jinshan. Geng Niang recounted her experiences, and Geng Niang took the boat to visit Mrs. Zheng. Mrs. Zheng treated him like a son-in-law, inviting him into her home and hosting him for several days before he left. From then on, the two families maintained a close relationship. Yi Shishi, the author, says, "In times of great catastrophe, one can live through compromise and debauchery, but only the chaste can die honorably. The living bear the hatred with eyes wide open, while the deceased evoke tears of sorrow. As for someone who remains composed, slays their enemy, among the countless great men in history, it's probably difficult to find someone equal to them. Who's to say that women can't stand shoulder to shoulder with heroic men?"
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.